All right. Hope you guys have been having a great week this week. Today I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about email. I know email sounds really old school, especially for a guy that's, I work in technology. But aside from the SMS, which open rates are like 90% on SMS, the second best, especially in churches, tends to be email. And you can see, 30%, 40%. If you're really amazing, you might even get close to that 50%, but realistically somewhere in that 30% range tends to be really common. So it's a really good way to stay in touch with your church congregation. Even though it's kind of old school and we like to think about social media and how much outreach we can do via social media, email still tends to be one of those top ways to really stay in touch with your church and your congregation. Now, the problem is so many churches I run into don't actually have their email set up properly, and they're not using good practices. And what happens is, because of that, they're not ending up in people's inbox. They may get filtered on over into junk mail. They may get quarantined. There's a lot of things that can happen if you're not setting up your email properly, and if you're not following good practices on how do you contact and stay in touch with your members. So first, there's 3 technical things that you really need to pay attention to. The first technical thing is, and these are all DNS based, so they're all based on your DNS rules, just like your website, right? So the first one is you need an SPF rule. Now, it can only be one SPF rule. I've seen people accidentally do 2. It doesn't work if you do 2. You need to do 1. And in the SPF, you need to have an include or possibly an IP address listed for each valid sending service. So like if you're using Microsoft 365, that's going to be, that spf.protection.outlook.com. That's one of your includes. But then if you've also got MailChimp, you probably need to have included the servers.mcsv.net, right? So then you're telling it, okay, not only can they send from Microsoft Office, but also I'm allowing MailChimp to send from my church as well. And your church management system probably also will need an SPF rule, depending on who it is or how they're sending. If your church management system allows you to send to some like random domain name, don't use it. Make sure you keep using your church's domain name. So if your email address that you're always using is pastorsteve@mychurch.com, always be sending stuff from mychurch.com. Don't go off and use any kind of other random thing. It's just going to confuse people and they're not going to open it. And a lot of the times that stuff's going to get marked off as junk mail, or it's definitely not going to end up in their focused mailbox. That's for sure. Now, the second type of DNS rule that you need is the DKIM rule. And DKIM, it can be confusing for people as to how it's different from SPF. This one is based on keys. So you have to follow the instructions of the email service provider to make sure you apply and point to those keys properly. Sometimes that's going to be a text record. Sometimes it's going to be a CNAME record. Depends on the service provider, right? And just follow their guidance and their guidelines on doing that. Now, once you have those 2 rules in place, there's another type of rule called DMARC, DMARC, and it's built kind of on the backs of those 2. And what DMARC does is it actually kind of protects your sending reputation. So one of the things that you're going to run into as a church is criminals see that you're a church and that you've got a pastor, and it's very public and open who the pastor is, who the staff are. And they're going to try and pretend to be your pastor and try to email people that they know are in your church or in your congregation, and or even just in your community more broadly. So what you want to do is you want to do everything you can to kind of prevent emails that are spoofed, that aren't really from you, from getting into people's mailboxes. And if you don't take action to do that, your reputation as a sender can drop and be impacted. And so, Google and Yahoo and Hotmail and all these guys will actually like rank down your emails, and it'll be more likely to end up in a quarantine or a junk box or something like that. So when you put in a DMARC rule, what you do is you say, okay, my SPF rules are correct. My DKIM rules are correct. If you receive anything from that does not adhere to these rules, what I want you to do is either chuck it into the quarantine or just reject it. And what that can do is really protect you. It can protect your members, and it can help to improve your reputation as a sender, because you've kind of come out and said, this is what I want to do. Also, if you're using a service like Postmark, you can, which is free, you can actually kind of receive analytics of how much of your email is actually going properly aligned to your SPF and DKIM rules, which is really important because it'll let you know if something's gone wrong. But also it'll kind of give you some insight into, are people out there really trying to spoof and pretend to be you? And I've seen that quite a few times where yes, another bad actor tried to set up, say, like some other type of email sending service. You know, if your church was on one, then they may have gone and tried to set up another, or like if you're on MailChimp, they try to set up on Bluehost or whatever. What's the blue one? I can't remember what the blue one is, but they'll jump in and try to set up and pretend to be you and be sending all this stuff, and none of it's going to adhere to that DKIM, and it'll show up that, you know, somebody was trying to send hundreds and hundreds of emails pretending to be you. So those 3 DNS rules can help you a lot in staying out of like the junk mail, staying out of the quarantine, making sure that your people are actually going to get your emails in their mailbox. Now, the second part is getting your content right. Okay, so getting your content right, it's kind of more of this art part. You know, there's the science part, which is getting the rules and things proper. Now we get into kind of the art of it. Just like preaching, there's a little bit of art, a little bit of a science to it. Same thing with this type of communications. And so number one thing that you need to do, it needs to be short and it needs to be personal. And for the life of me, I meet a lot of churches, I meet a lot of pastors, and these pastors are like the most friendly, down-to-earth people. Like if you met them for coffee or just out on the street, like they just talk to you like you're a person, and you'd be willing to just do anything for them because they're just got this charisma to them. But then they go to write an email or something to their congregation, and it just doesn't come through at all, right? Like it's some big, long newsletter thing with all this stuff in it, and everything that makes them them and everything that makes their church the church that they are gets lost in the middle of this because they just haven't presented who they actually are throughout this. So try to keep it really short. Try to keep it focused. What do you actually want them to do? If you've been preaching about community, maybe your email that week should only be a few sentences about, hey, guys, last week I preached about community. And the important thing about community is actually being around other Christians, even outside of church. So, you know what I'd really like you guys to do this week is consider joining a small group. And here's a link for you to go to our site and join a small group. Now, that's a lot more personal. It's a lot more focused, and people are actually probably going to do it because they're going to see this short little email. They're going to go, oh, okay, it's from the pastor. You know, it says it's to me. I'm going to read it. Oh, yeah, maybe I should consider doing this. And they'll do it. Whereas if you have this big thing with like lots and lots of stuff in it, that's going to get lost in the. There's this saying which is, confused minds never. I think it's buy, but similar kind of thing with all actions. You know, if you put a lot of options in front of somebody, they often won't make a choice. You know, if you keep it limited to like 1 or 2, they might actually make that choice. At least they're more likely to. And if you ever try this, even with like a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, if you give them 20 choices, they're indecisive. And if you give them like one option, hey, do you want to do this? Yes or no? They'll say, oh yeah, I want to do that. Or, oh no, I don't want to do that. And you're just a lot more likely to get something happen as opposed to indecisiveness. So that's important. Like I said, it's important to, you know, if you're the average size church, you know, around 100 people, you know, even up to like a couple hundred people, just send it from the senior pastor's email address. Most people are not ever going to reply back and fill up his mailbox. So don't have to worry about it. Just send it out. It looks friendly. It looks nice. And if they do respond back, you know, you might actually get a chance to get in touch with maybe the introverts in your church, because maybe they weren't as keen to walk in on a Sunday, all that stuff going around and sit down and talk to the pastor. But then all of a sudden, if it's an email and you've asked them a question in the email, just broadly, they might respond back. And then you might actually start a relationship and find out, oh, you know what, this person's got a huge gift for actually like running a small group, or, this is the perfect person to work in our sound booth, or maybe there's some sort of track that they're ready for to kind of get on that, and you just wouldn't know it otherwise, but you can find out that way. Similarly, right now, 30% of Christians globally have just not returned to on-site church. It's a good chance that you might actually strike up a conversation with a few of these and get them back into some sort of in-person community. So it can be an on-ramp in that regard to kind of interacting with members that you may not have normally bumped into because they just either aren't as big of a presence on Sunday, or they just aren't showing up on Sunday. Now, one more thing here. I mean, kind of a few more things in one thing here, but the next thing that's really important here is use your images and links really sparingly. It's super fun to throw like a meme or something on there, especially like I said, if you're being personable and this is the kind of thing you do, yeah, throw one on there or throw just one image. Make sure it has something to do with what you're talking about. Don't throw lots and lots of images. Most systems, when they receive something with a lot of images, they're going to assume it's bulk email or that it's some sort of advertising, and they're going to smash it into either the junk, or they're going to smash it over into like a commercial emails kind of folder or something. Like they're not going to put it right in front of the eyeballs of people. So yeah, just try not to have too many of those. Try to focus again on when it comes to links, just focus on try to get them to the website to register for something. Don't put on like lots and lots of links. Don't put on 10 links. This is for children's ministry. This is for youth ministry. This is for, you're just going to lose people when you do that. Here's a common one I run into. And there's a little bit of a generational divide on this one, right? Like if you're younger, you're going to totally get this. And if you're older, you're going to be like, why shouldn't I do that? And that's, don't attach things to the emails that you're sending out to your congregation. Like if you're sending out these like mass communications, just please do not attach stuff to them. Summarize what you need them to know in the email. Don't stick an attachment on there. If you need them to then go sign up for something, like don't put a registration form in there that they're going to like have to fill out and like email back or something. Just use your church management system and let them register with that, or some other system like Eventbrite, whatever you're going to use, let them register digitally and electronically for that stuff. Or don't make them open up an attachment to see like what's going to be happening at the church or something like that. Like nobody likes that. And so people are going to avoid it, number one. And number two, because emailing attachments is the number one way to hack into organizations, like it's just like far and wide the most common way that organizations are breached. Like even those massive multi-billion-dollar breaches tend to start with an email and a file attachment. More and more we see the email systems starting to kind of scrutinize those. And so they're going to be looking at these things and going like, yeah, there's something kind of junky about this. We keep seeing this file pop up, and we keep scanning this particular file, and it looks like it's going out to like massive numbers of people. So we've already scanned it to see if it's malicious. Okay, maybe it's not malicious, but like this is just kind of weird, and we're going to start throwing this into like quarantine or kind of like junk mail or something. There's something weird about this, and so we're not going to put it right in front of the eyeballs of the people that you want to have view your thing. So try to avoid it. Only use it when you just absolutely have to use it for some reason. Now, finally, I kind of mentioned asking questions just kind of briefly there, but ask questions in the emails that you send out to your church members. Don't just send them out and say, hey, this, and this. Send them out and say, hey, this, and this. And then ask them a question very broadly, right? You can ask them a question both in the title. Like if you don't have something that you necessarily wanted them to go and do this week, like an action step, you can just ask them a question. You can say like, hey, here's what I do for, my quiet time and devotions and stuff. What do? And see what they say back. Like, you can actually get a pulse for your congregation that way. But also, when people reply to an email, then those email systems say, oh, this is someone they interact with. And so this is someone they want to interact with. And this is someone that we should always put in their focused email box or their primary inbox. And so there's a really good chance that those people are going to always, from then on, see your emails that you send out from the church, no matter what they are. So that's a really important thing to do, is try to get some interaction. Because if they do that interaction, you're going to have a really good chance of always being in front of them. All right. So speaking of asking questions, what about you guys? What tips or tricks have you seen working in churches or with churches, or that churches have sent to you? Let me know below. Also comment, like, subscribe, all that usual stuff. And over here on the sides, as usual, there's going to be some links. Go ahead, like I said, like and subscribe for me. All right. I hope you've been having a great week, and I will talk to you guys next week.